Welcome to the Film Student Study Guide. I am Roberto Mako Stens with my guest. This is where you say your name.
Normally you introduce
Oh,
me,
I
dude.
do. I know.
Yeah.
Truman
Normally I
Matheny.
get the full treatment.
Oh, okay.
But I guess
I thought it'd be
we're
cool
trying
if we did a sound off or like a call and repeat. But
we could do like in Flight of the Conchords where they do, Jermaine present. That's probably my favorite ongoing joke in that show.
There's a lot of good ongoing. Anyway, this week we have Infernal Affairs. My bad. We'll get to that later. And The Departed. Next week, what?
Sorry, you finish that, and then I have something.
Next week we have The Art of Self-Defense. So that'll be our first. That'll be our second one-off episode since the second episode. This episode is episode 6. So starting to get there.
So, I developed a theory that I figured would make pretty solid podcast material here. Figured it might be an interesting thing to open up the show with.
Okay.
Roberto,
has not told me about this, by the way.
Are you familiar with iambic pentameter?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
You never took English?
I mean, I took English.
So, Shakespeare, the way I understand it, which is a very loose understanding at best, Shakespeare is written in lines of specific inflections. So the way you read Shakespeare, there's a specific rhythm and up and down to each line, right? And there's something about pentameter, right, that means 5, so there's like 5 inflections or something, right? I never understood iambic pentameter, to be honest.
From your description, that makes sense to me. Like, I understand why people would do it, and it probably has some like weird like cognitive thing with your brain if you do things in 5s.
Well, I mean, since everything in Shakespeare is written in poetry, right? You know, it's
some poetry shit, yeah.
It's a specific type of poetry that's more complicated than limerick and haiku, which
which are the ones that we understand.
I don't see why there's any reason to go further than limerick, haiku, and free verse.
No, yeah, those are the peak right there. Like,
yeah, poetry peaked at that point in time when they stopped doing that.
Yeah, it just kept trying to reinvent itself, and just it's like whenever you make it like a copy of like a Xerox of something, it just gets a little bit, and it looks the same, but it's just a little bit worse. Yeah, it's like that.
Fun fact about limericks, go back and listen to "It's Tricky" by Run DMC. It's limericks.
Really?
Yeah.
Like all the lyrics.
I met this little girlie. Her hair was really curly. Went to her house and bust her out. I had to leave real early. These girls are really sleazy. All they just say is please me. I'll spend some time and rock a rhyme. I said it's not that easy.
Honestly, I'm more surprised that you could just bust out those rhymes just on the spot.
I'm offended at myself that I don't know all the lyrics. Let me see if I can do my favorite line.
I know the song that you're talking about now. Like the chorus played in my head. I'm like, got it.
Yeah. For all the somethings, we don't use drugs, but you assume on your own. They offer coke and laxadope, but we just leave it alone. I love that line. I think it's a brave stance in rap music to say you don't do drugs.
I mean, it's a brave stance in like any artist work because most of literally everyone does to some extent.
Yeah. I just appreciate that they're offering the idea that You know, you don't gotta be cool to do drugs. You know,
or you can be cool without doing them.
And they're rappers. You know, it's ridiculous, and I think it's funny, and I like it. Both sincerely and insincerely. Anyway, let's move on to
this is a movie podcast.
Well, let me finish because I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay, I'll let you go.
So back to iambic pentameter.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
So let's, the pentameter, pent means five, of course.
Yeah.
So we got to scratch that, and I don't know what the real term for a non-5 pentameter is. So from now on, I'm just going to refer to it as a tameter. So I think Seinfeld has its own tameter.
Oh, yes.
I think Seinfeld is written... Specifically, I think each character has their own tameter.
Oh, I like this.
And so, specifically, my favorite tameter that I think is the most evident is the George and Jerry Seinfeld discussion tameter.
Uh-huh.
And that goes something like this. Was it a scratch or a pick? It was a scratch. It was a pick. It was a scratch. He's like, are you sure it was a scratch? It was a pick. Scratch, pick, that kind of thing, right?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I don't have enough sound bites or conversations of Seinfeld memorized to provide more evidence, but at some point in time, I'll be writing a research paper on this, I have a feeling. So
honestly, I would read that research paper. That you have already piqued my interest with that.
So anyway, I figured it might be a fun idea to share with everybody that Seinfeld is written in a tameter. Also, one more thing. Even though there is an episode called Bizarro Jerry, I think the real Bizarro Jerry is George Costanza. Because Seinfeld and George Costanza, both, any line that George says, pretty much, could be transferred over to Jerry. And any line that Jerry says could pretty much be transferred over to George. Right? As far as, like, there was this misunderstanding. It's always a misunderstanding in Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. And I think they both take similar stances on the misunderstandings. And the only difference between the two is that it never works out for George, and it generally ends up working out pretty all right for Jerry.
Interesting.
So, I think that's a really interesting thing to think about, is that George is just Jerry, but tragedy Jerry, and Jerry is comedy George.
I also
in
said,
the Greek sense of those words.
I also said piqued my interest. Turns out I was writing an essay and I used that phrase. Piqued is not spelled P-E-A-K. Oh fuck. It's not spelled P-E-A-K-E-D, right? It's P. It's like P-U-I-Q-U-E or something like that. Or P-I-Q-U-E. It's completely spelled differently, and I don't know why. Like, one is a noun and one is a verb, and they're spelled completely differently, and it makes no sense to me, and I figured that out earlier today when I was writing an essay, and that surprised me.
And thank you all for tuning in to The Hero Cycle, the podcast where we make the concepts in English interesting and relevant to your life today. Now we will end this podcast, and we're gonna jump into our side project, the Film Student Study Guide.
Okay, so internal affairs. It is
Infernal.
Infernal affairs. That's right.
So I made this mistake, and to those 17 listeners who listened to our first episode
and
on
probably
SoundCloud,
did not watch the last one,
who have been following along so very loyally. We really apologize for making it difficult for you to find the film we're talking about today by messing up and calling it Internal Affairs when it's Infernal Affairs, even though Internal Affairs is a much better title for this film.
Internal Affairs would like make sense, and like the F looks like a T. They just do. They're similar characters. Yeah. Anyway, Infernal Affairs, Asian film made in Hong Kong in 2002.
Yeah.
It's good. I believe it won some awards. I remember seeing on the IMDb that it was like popular, and then I didn't click to see which specific awards, or I just don't remember what they are. So what you say there is critically acclaimed. That's how next time
Netflix gets out of having to specify whether or not it actually is sick.
We're learning. And then we have The Departed, a Scorsese film made in 2006, which I'm guessing is probably critically acclaimed.
It won Best Picture, dude.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that completely skews my vision of this movie now.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get into it.
This was the only film that Scorsese has made thus far that has won Best Picture, and
really?
that's why The Irishman was also kind of an interesting thing, because they were thinking, will Scorsese win a second one? And I'm interested to know if anybody's ever
good as his other films. His other films are way better.
Wow, you're about to get a fight picked with you.
Well, I'm ready to take that fight. I like this film. It's good, but I have some words to say, specifically about the relationship between these two movies, which you probably know more about than I do.
So first off, I did intentionally try and do this thing. Which one did you watch first?
Oh, Internal Affairs.
Yeah, so I intentionally told you to watch Infernal Affairs first.
Ah, fuck.
Because I watched The Departed first, not knowing that it was a remake.
Yeah.
And then I watched Infernal Affairs just recently, and The Departed has been one of my favorite films for a long time.
Yeah, no, if I had seen The Departed first, I'd probably love it, and then I'd watch Infernal Affairs and be like, well, fuck. But now that since I watched Infernal Affairs and then watched The Departed, it honestly just feels like a whitewashing of Infernal Affairs.
Well, I disagree entirely.
Well, I mean, okay.
But no, my stance is very strongly that I'll make an addendum to this in a second, but first I'm gonna make my bold claim that The Departed is beyond a doubt deserving of being the only Scorsese film to win Best Picture.
Okay.
My addendum is this. I think After Hours is on par with this film. But I still think The Departed being the only Scorsese film to win Best Picture is entirely fair.
Okay. So
what are you looking for more? I think The Departed is his best work.
It's not his work though. It's not original.
That's not true at all. We're talking about a 2-hour or so film, an epic, right? Compared to a thriller that's, pretty much just at feature length. He expanded on this, dude.
Yeah, he did, but literally all the major plot points are there. To where, like, even, like, the small, like, gimmicks of, like, what people are talking about, like, in the movie. Okay, look, there's no way that we're not going to be able to, like, talk about spoilers, so just watch these two movies. They're both really, really good. Like, whenever the people, like, down to, like, the specific words that people are using, like, even, like... Whenever the two goons are talking about, like, however, and, like, stuff in the movie is rearranged, like, different parts are in different places, but it's essentially the same movie, right? Like, whenever the two goons are talking about, like, whenever a policeman is watching you, it's literally the same thing.
So, let me tell you this. First off, I already forgot everything I was going to say, but whatever. You're wrong. I'm right. Go on to your next point. Shoot. So, all of the characters are so much... in Scorsese's film, we have three-dimensional characters. In Infernal Affairs, we have... a pretty simple, straightforward, cop thriller movie. You know what I mean? It's very
agree.
Much.
I completely agree.
Scorsese went in and helped kind of make it more intertwined and better in certain places, right? Even going back to this cop dialogue that you're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. In Scorsese's film, it's, if you're not paying attention to us, you're a cop. In Infernal Affairs, it's, if they're looking at us, they're a cop. Now, I think Scorsese did that one better, for sure. Because it's more funny the way he did it, and he's like, most women are cops, And also the whole idea of if they're trying to pretend that they're not paying attention to you, then they would be undercover cops. Whereas someone looking at you just means they're a cop. I think it's not as good, not as strong. Now, of course, this is a minute, silly detail, of course, but it's the detail you brought up. And I think that goes to show... with any singular point of overlap in these two films.
I would agree. Here, let me just read you the notes that I took. So for Infernal,
let's go note by note.
Okay, so Infernal Affairs, the note that I took was I felt like it could have used another more draft of the script or a better edit, but then I thought that it could have either just been the translation from like Chinese to the subtitles, because something just like seems off or not smooth, or like certain like things seem
it definitely
jagged. And I just chalked that up to like that just being a translation thing, but it could definitely be a script thing or like just an edit thing.
So, of course, neither of us speak Chinese.
Obviously.
I can say wo bu si huan wulika.
Okay.
Which means I don't like physics class. But that's about all I learned in 2 years of Chinese.
Ni hao?
I know ni hao. I know shi shi as well. And I know wo zhao Truman.
Nice. I'm sure if I dropped you off in Shanghai right now, you'd be able to make it back.
I'll just keep telling everybody thank you. Shisha. Everybody would be like, man, this guy doesn't have much substance, but he's so polite.
Someone coughs on you, and you're just like, oh, shisha.
Shisha. Wo bu si huan wulika. I've got one more.
Uh-huh.
Taikuela, which means it's I'm butchering the pronunciation, I'm sure.
Of course. We're white.
But taikuela means this is way too expensive. So what I could do is I could probably, say, and I think Ichi-ni-san, no, that's probably Japanese.
Okay.
But
Do you
maybe
learn
they're
Japanese in Chinese class?
But my guess is that oh no, it's san, I think. That's Chinese. So I could probably, if I could find myself an airport, I could go zongguo, which means English, I believe. So I could get one English, so they could probably get me to either, Britain or America, and then they'll tell me how much it costs, and I'll just keep going. Taikuela, 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 until I'm ready to pay whatever it is, and then I'll go shisha and get on the plane, and then I'm good.
Truman, have I ever told you of my idea where it's sort of like a Jackass thing, but Jackass documentary, whatever. The basic idea is we get people, right? We send them off to a foreign country. The first person to get deported back to the U.S. wins.
Wow.
We're sending you to China. I want to see how quick you can do it.
I'll just tell everybody it's too expensive and thank you.
You're like, fucking Americans, I thought they had money.
Anyway, so, yeah, we can't really decipher what is a translation issue and what isn't, and what's a script issue. But overall, I definitely did not think this movie flowed well. I think each scene was too short for what it should have been. I thought the emotions weren't as high as they should have been. And overall, the main thing that this movie has going for it is the plot premise and a couple really good key beats, right?
That's what I would. It's like, I feel like it, like, certain things about it made it feel like an anime. Like, I don't know, like, whether it's just sort of just like. I
don't think I agree with that at all.
Well, there's like certain things that, like, the way that, like, shots are composed, or just like the way that, like, camera actions happen, or just sort of like the
I think it feels exactly
of people just like standing on a roof, like with the city behind them, and like highlighted by the sky. Like that's a pretty anime thing.
No, I think it feels exactly like a 2000s cop or spy movie.
Honestly, that's fair, but
I think it fits right in there with, Jason Bourne and I can't come up with another example.
The Departed is also a 2000s cop movie, so.
Yeah, but I think there were certain... Put it this way, even the... Jason Bourne is so blue. All the films...
I would say it's green.
In the original trilogy. Okay, fair. It's blue and green. I would say that The Departed is probably more of an orange overall color palette.
I would say it's a sky blue, but...
Really? The Departed?
Mm-hmm. Oh, not The Departed. I thought you meant Infernal Affairs. The Departed... Yeah, maybe it's a very pale orange, but definitely some scenes could definitely be a little grayer. But I can see the orange, yeah. Like, the colors look normal, if not a little bit more poppy.
I mean, yeah. So I think it certainly has a pretty solid difference in look and feel, but at the same time, there were definitely multiple scenes that were pretty much edited in the same way.
Yeah.
with a couple, really, really key edit looks and things that were very, very similar. The other thing is that final plot twist of first off, I think they really skimped on the ending of Infernal Affairs. Like,
Yeah.
not
I felt
necessarily.
like the ending was a little bit rough.
Well, I thought the whole movie was rushed, but the thing is like compared to The Departed, right? They really, really, The Departed really added a whole bunch specifically to the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the bad guy dies in the end of
He does.
Infernal Affair. Who kills him?
Matt Damon's character in Infernal, like the the police.
No, who kills Matt Damon in Infernal Affairs?
Matt Damon is the police person. Oh
yes.
Wait,
who kills Matt Damon?
He doesn't die.
Yeah. So that little ending bit, right? And then the other bit that really I thought added quite a lot was the irony that this whole time Jack Nicholson's character, right, has been an FBI informant, which is not anywhere to be seen in Infernal Affairs.
Yeah.
Did you catch that in The Departed? It's
it's explicitly said, but like there's definitely an irony there. The other irony is that like he had Jack Nicholson was like, "You're my boy," or whatever. It was like gonna say something along the lines of that, and then Matt Damon was like, "Bullshit," and then like in the time the person was like he's like, I'm the other mole. There's multiple of us. Like I feel like that was definitely okay. So let me go through my bullet points of The Departed so we can get those out of the way, and then so we can talk about them, because there's a couple. I really like the Boston accent.
Yeah, I think the way I pitched this movie,
baby,
the way I pitched the movie to people, and have gotten multiple people to watch this movie based on this pitch, is tell me you don't want to watch a whole bunch of Boston people yelling at each other for 2 hours.
Oh, it's so great. They have, and the other thing is it's literally every famous actor. Every famous male actor has like a role in this movie. It's insane. Like there's
I'm not going to argue with this one.
Like Matt Damon, Leonardo DiCaprio, I can't even name all these people. Like
Alec Baldwin, Mark Wahlberg, and Jack Nicholson. The only people you missed.
And then there's also the person from
if he's the person from, it's probably not the famous actor you're claiming him to be.
It's a fuck off. It's Apocalypse Now. The main dude in Apocalypse Now.
Oh, holy moly.
Yeah.
That is Martin Sheen.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. Literally every famous person is in this movie.
Anyway,
Leonardo DiCaprio wears Tim's in this movie, and it's funny.
That was a bullet point that needed to be added.
It was 100% a bullet point that needed to be added.
I want to add one more thing, just to give a reason why this movie's one of my favorite movies, and it's one singular dialogue line that I don't think, I think it's possible to say that this is the best line ever in the history of cinema.
Oh, okay.
Very possibly, I would make the argument for that. Which you're welcome to come at me with a better line after you hear it if you'd like, but I don't know. And that's this. who put up the cameras in here? He's like, I did. You know, yeah, I did. Who the fuck are you? I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
Ugh, Mark Wahlberg is so good.
Mark Wahlberg is probably the best character in this movie. He's so
such
great.
an asshole. I love it.
And then also there are so many great lines from Alec Baldwin in this movie that are just ridiculous. So specifically, another part that I believe is shared is the Immaculate Record conversation.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh my god, you can't even compare those two scenes, even though it's the same points. It's just we have one awesome scene,
yeah,
and one
but here's
functional scene.
Here's the thing that bothers me about this movie, right? And yes, I will completely agree with that point there. But in both movies, they're both golfing, and it's both like they didn't like try to like do anything there. They were just like, it was golfing in that other movie, we'll have them golfing here, right? And there's so many of those points, and like there's a lot of things in that The Departed that take Infernal Affairs and like kick it up to the next level and make it better, right? And it smooths it over a lot and makes it a lot more of like an easier to understand movie. Like with Infernal Affairs, you get the basic idea and you're like, this is cool, I like this idea, and it runs with it, but I feel like it trips in a couple places and doesn't like fully carry itself. The Departed carries itself all the way, but I feel like there's in a lot of scenes it doesn't fully like innovate completely. It doesn't like a lot of like there's a lot of scenes where it's just like, well, this is just the exact same. And like there is like the part where the dude's like can't write his name and like messes it up, and then his name is Citizen for some reason, which makes no sense, right? Like he's writing it. Oh, well, okay. Forget the Citizen part. I understand why he might be why writing Citizen, but like I feel like there's something more creative that you could do there that could service the plot in a better way. And in those parts, it just feels like lazy. And in other times, yes, it feels great and it makes like sense. And like the way that they innovate and they make the plot smoother in The Departed makes sense, and I like it for that. But then there's just other times where it's just like, this is just Infernal Affairs. And the thing that I like Infernal Affairs for is that it takes that base idea and it runs with it. And I feel like it runs with it harder than The Departed does. Like with
what
Infernal...
do you mean?
Okay, so in Infernal Affairs, there's several drug deals, right? And there's like 2 or 3 drug dealing scenes where each scene you get the two people battling each other, right? And the two people are like actively like informing to the other people directly, and then their other person is like, someone's doing this, and their plans are changing, and they're realizing that they're like that they know that each other are like doing it, and so they have to like sort of outsmart each other to get it to work better, right? And that doesn't happen as much in this movie. If like that, it just, and I feel like that's like the interesting like plot point is like that's sort of like that's the thing that I like go up to my friends and I'm like, this is like an idea that I thought of, and this is an idea that you could do where you could take this and branch it out and to make it into all sorts of like cool ideas and interactions, and that happens in Infernal Affairs, and I feel like that doesn't happen as much as in The Departed. And I don't know.
I don't know that I agree. I don't think I agree at all.
The Departed is definitely a better movie, and it's definitely smoother. But I feel like in trying to smooth it over and make it a better movie, it loses some of what made Infernal Affairs interesting to me.
I don't think I agree at all whatsoever. I think there was much more interaction between the two sides in The Departed, and I think all of the all of those scenes you're talking about, these confrontation scenes, right, are much clearer in The Departed. Whereas I feel like a lot of Infernal Affairs, it kind of loses you in multiple sections where you really are like, wait, what's going on? Which, again, that is something that very likely could be a problem with my reading, because I'm a slow reader.
And specifically the subtitles in this movie, there were a couple that, like, when people are screaming at each other and they're just having a screaming match, they just don't stay on the screen at all. And there's a couple of points where I had to rewind to see the subtitles.
Yeah, this, along with a couple other movies I've seen recently, the subtitles really, really go fast. And
it only happens in a couple spots, though.
And then the other thing is that, you know, it could be a translation issue, but I really think that...
Yeah, Chinese does not really go well into English.
Huh. What does go well into English?
German, French, Spanish. I mean, basically,
well,
because it goes better, but it, like, Chinese is completely like a completely different alphabet. The alphabets were conceived using completely different, like, philosophical ideas, and, like, the way that, like, they, like, conceived of objects having meaning and assigning words to those objects has a completely different meaning than we do to, like, other objects.
I will say,
like, just like the whole, like, naming and, like, structure of how the languages are created just don't work as well.
Something kind of funny is my friend Alex Cortez, who I don't think you've ever met or talked to.
I've heard of him.
Anyway, he doesn't speak much Spanish, but he speaks a little bit, you know. And he's because of quarantine been watching Narcos, which he actually pulled the same thing I did with Narcos, which I thought was funny, and I was like, this is why we're friends. He and I both just stopped when Pablo Escobar got killed, because it was like,
oh, well, that's
all
the
right.
point.
Well, that's that, you know. All right, cool, we did it.
Yeah. Like in Breaking Bad, it takes literally the entire show for that to happen. But
man, you just spoiled something. Whereas
it's been out for 10 years.
You know, whereas no one's surprised that Pablo Escobar got killed.
It's been out for 10 years.
Anyway, the one thing that he definitely does know pretty all right is the cursing, right?
Yeah.
And
well,
in
that's
Narcos,
the easiest part of any language to learn.
A lot of the curses, right? The subtitles just go "son of a bitch" or "motherfucker." When Cortez was telling me that really they're saying some really far out stuff. That, you know, he's not just saying "son of a bitch" or "motherfucker."
No,
he's going.
No, they go way into it. Yeah.
He's doing something about, you know, like donkey fucker people with heads in the sand and stuff. Just ridiculous insults and all of that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Like, whenever just people go off in the deep end, just creating insults out of just random words, the best insults. They mean so much more.
I have a question for you.
And
this is somewhat of a philosophical question, right? Okay. That we're kind of getting into.
Cool.
So, when we're dealing with a remake, right? The big complaint that one might have, right, is that the thing about this remake, right, is a lot of remakes are either nothing's changed or it's a full reimagination, you know?
Yeah.
This one's somewhere in between of
Definitely.
It's more of just an expansion rather than a full reimagination or just a full shot for shot.
Yes.
And so specifically when, people translate to English and just do a shot for shot, it really is,
yeah, that's
pretty
just whitewashing.
Looked down on overall.
Yeah.
But my question here is, Martin Scorsese has had writing credits for, I'm just going to estimate based on this list, 20 of his films. And of those 20 films, which included, that's including shorts, so I'm going to take it down to, and a lot of these are documentaries. Never mind. So, of his full-length films, he has gotten writing credits for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Has he gotten any writing credits? Like, has there been movies that he's created that he hasn't gotten writing credits for?
Yes.
What?
He didn't get writing credits for this one, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
But now, of those, also he didn't write The Irishman. He didn't write my favorite, After Hours. He did get credit for Goodfellas, which is an adaptation of a book. He did get credit for Silence, if you saw that one, which is another remake of an Asian film. And he didn't get credit for Taxi Driver or Raging Bull as far as writing goes.
How many of his movies are his own creations, and how many of them are like significantly are based off of books or based off of other movies from other countries? Because
you've got a great question that I cannot answer myself. Because he also, another one of my old favorites was The Aviator, which is based off a person. It's a biopic. Yeah. I also, I'm not a big fan of Hugo, but
he did that. That's based off a book.
That's also based off a book, and that one's pretty. I
would say it's a hit or a miss. It's mostly interesting for its visuals, I would say.
Yeah, I don't think I really like the story that much, so...
That's fair. The book was better.
I read the book, and I wasn't a huge fan of the book either.
Well, the cool part of the book is their giant, full-scale, page drawings that are really intricate and cool. That's the point of the book.
Yeah. So anyway, my question to you, then, is how is a remake different than directing a film that you didn't write the script for?
Well, because I feel if it's a remake, there's pressure to make something new or to somehow change it, or keep, you can either go the same. Okay, so there's two routes. You can either do it shot for shot with just different actors, which I feel like specifically if you're taking a movie from another culture, that's just whitewashing, which is shitty. If you are changing it, then you have to add enough to make it a worthwhile movie by itself. And
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think did you have more to your point? Sorry.
I figured you just have to make it sure that it stands on that it stands on its own, and you're not just like I feel like there's a boundary line where it's this movie would be cool if instead of this it did this and this, right? Versus actually making a different movie with the same plot.
So as far as the great remakes of all time, right? I feel like most of them are pretty solid reimaginings, but even, for example, Romeo and Juliet or Romeo plus Juliet by, I believe, Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah.
That one is taking, the Shakespearean literature
God,
and putting it in a more
you know
modern
who was
day
in that?
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Dude, that movie's sick.
It's
I love
sick.
that movie.
I saw it in English class in freshman year.
Yeah, I had seen a little bit before, and then I saw, the clips he showed in English class, and then I went and watched the whole film, and
It's
yeah,
cool.
I really like it.
But, like, there's a difference with that. Okay.
Anyway.
We can get into this later.
So, yeah. I think I made my point, just that, the reimagining is generally the best, but at the same time, I feel like with this movie, there's enough substantial additions that really do distinguish it from the original. And the other thing that I think is solid is the just the change in the name. I appreciate, because I generally, it's generally a worse sign if the movie has the same name as the original. So for some reason, that's
okay, but
something that makes a difference for me.
Departed,
and then,
yeah, I sure, I'll agree.
It's not a big deal, but for some reason, it does really make a difference for me.
But the Internal Affairs is like the perfect name for these movies.
Internal Affairs is probably the perfect name. But what I want to ask is, you keep mentioning that whitewashing as if it's kind of the worst thing.
Well, it's racist.
Well, I have a question of why there is a problem with a Hollywood film remaking a foreign film that wouldn't have its audience in America, likely.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is the big debate this is the big debate with whitewashing, because yes, your point is correct, and that if The Departed was not made, probably nearly not as many people would know about Infernal Affairs, right? Like, we would not be having this conversation. I would have not seen Infernal Affairs. We probably just would have watched The Departed or with some other movie, right? But at the same time, if you take a movie that just has like an Asian movie with subtitles, and you just put white actors instead, and there's no subtitles, and that's the only difference that you make, like, come on now. Like, so, that feels cheap, and like and while like you're not adding anything significant to, like, you're not making a significant artistic contribution to the movie and making something new. You're just taking someone else's work and redoing it for an audience that prefers to look at white actors that they already know versus Asian actors that they don't.
I have another question.
You're just reframing it in a friendlier like frame.
So I see your point. It's interesting, but what I see as a big difference is when you put something in a specific language, right, that pretty much designates the specific audience for it, and that's the people who speak that language. So I certainly agree. So put it this way, I would definitely agree that, let's take an example of, let's say, The Wiz came out before The Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
I would definitely consider that whitewashing, and I would definitely consider that problematic. You know what I mean? Because we haven't changed the audience, or even, like, think about this. What if we remade like Barbershop or Friday? Or I'm trying to think of another famous movie with like a pretty solidly all black cast, or a Tyler Perry movie, for instance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or better yet, Us. You know, if we were to take one of these movies and remake them with an all white cast, I definitely see a big problem in that. That's obviously whitewashing. That's obviously, trying to take away credit and notoriety to a minority group. Whereas I don't know. Again, I'm not very informed in this issue, and it's certainly something I'm that's interesting to me, and I'm just kind of bouncing philosophy around in my mind. So I'm not taking
We're both stupid film students, and like anything that we say isn't necessarily like a decree of like this is what is, and it should always be, and like this is wrong and this isn't. But like this is something that's like developing, like in the film world of what is like good and not good. Like this is something that like has been ongoing for a couple of years that is like, I wouldn't say new ground, but this is something that people are like realizing and are being like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this. And this is like,
how about this? I think Death Note is a perfect example of what my thought of whitewashing looks like. The remake of Death Note.
I would agree.
With all American actors. I haven't seen Death Note. I haven't seen the entire series. I really know very little about the whole situation. But here's my point, is that the audience who likely watched the Death Note film and the audience who likely watched the Death Note series are likely entirely the same audience. So I don't feel that there is a new audience that's being created by translating it to English.
Because what you're saying is the only people who would be interested in a Death Note TV show are people who already like Death Note.
I thought it was a movie, right?
No,
the English remake.
It might have been. Honestly, I just know that the anime is good and the Netflix one is terrible and everybody hates it and calls it whitewashing. So there's the Netflix one and then there's the original. So
let's see.
Yeah, I think it might be a movie.
Yeah, this one's So it's a movie, and anyway, my thought is this: that if you're trying to bring the story to a different audience, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because here's the other thing that's a big difference, right? Is that The Departed is not called Infernal Affairs.
No.
And also, there isn't this huge following, right, of people who actively are buying merch and actively are going to Hot Topic just to buy cool stuff with their favorite anime show. You know, that doesn't happen with, to the best of my knowledge, Infernal Affairs.
It had a second and a third movie.
Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong then. But to the best of my knowledge, we're not dealing with something where we're trying to take the fan base and make it, I believe it's called a pre-sold franchise or a pre-sold movie or something like that.
Like,
where
if someone makes a new Star Wars movie, people are going to go and watch it, regardless of whether it's good or bad.
because they don't have to win anybody over. They just say Star Wars, and the fan base is going to continue. So I think that's the same with Death Note, in that the reason why they made this movie is likely because there was already this fan base, and so they already had that guaranteed sell, basically, and then they just, whitewashed it, and I think there's a big difference between even Death Note and The Departed, and
I would say it's a very blurry, hazy line.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with that. I think, there are a lot of things that are on a spectrum. I forgot what my new big theory of spectrum stuff is, but whatever. I forgot what it is, but I have some new big theory that there's not a oh yeah, I remember, and this is somewhat relevant. A lot of people are talking right now about what is indie and what isn't indie. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So if A24, a production company that calls itself an indie production company, makes a movie, is that an indie movie? Or is it a non-indie movie?
I thought the entire thing of an indie movie is that it's entirely self-funded, and that it may be distributed by another company, but it's not funded by production companies. Because, and I actually talked to this about Gallagher. This is one of the things that I remember from the film class, is he told me that The Phantom Menace is an indie movie because it is not it's in George Lucas and like another couple, one of his friends or whatever, they funded it entirely themselves, and the other two movies were funded by production companies, but that movie was funded by themselves. I thought that's what the whole indie thing was.
So yeah, it certainly has to do with funding, and my new idea, right, because there are a lot of people that are, discussing and thinking about, that, and I think that it's all on a spectrum there, because you have on one end, obviously, the Fast and the Furious film, that's coming out next or whatever, is not an indie film. Yeah. And then on the entirely other end of the spectrum, you have a movie like, for instance, the documentary I'm working on right now that I was just talking to you about, where,
or like literally any of the shit that we make.
Yeah, where, well, I don't even know if I would consider that something we made for class would also be further towards the non-indie side than my documentary, or Bailey's movie as well, Lockout or Lockdown. I forgot what it's called.
I feel like the more that a movie is made for creative purposes, the more likely it is to be an indie film. And maybe what the spectrum is.
I still think it's about funding.
I mean,
where
yes,
you get
I
your
would
materials
completely agree.
from.
That is the entire definition. But like, indie movies have become a genre now, and that I feel like sort of dilutes the definition of an indie movie, because like if you make a genre of movies based on their budget, like that's not, or like based on how they're funded, like.
So anyway,
I feel like the title is disingenuous for what it actually is.
Fair. So anyway, I think that it's a spectrum because, the documentary I'm working on, one could argue that, it is my money that I'm putting into this movie, and, the end budget likely will come out to be maybe $1,000 or less, right? Because factoring in the camera that I own, that I bought with, money I earned, and then factoring in the hard drives that I'm gonna have to use to send this to my collaborators, right? And then factoring in possible music I'm gonna have to buy and sound effects I'm gonna have to buy. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we have this sort of all the way indie of a person picks up the camera and makes the movie, and they really don't have much funding at all. Roger and me would also be on this scale, again, to the best of my knowledge.
Yes.
And then on the other end, and then somewhere in the middle you got A24, and somewhere in the middle you've got, Heart of Darkness, or Apocalypse Now, and, I
wouldn't say that.
I guess, Phantom Menace almost would be also pretty far on, the indie side, but just...
So is it completely just based on funding? Because if you made a Fast and the Furious movie with just Vin Diesel money, would it be an indie movie to you?
It'd be on the spectrum.
Well, that's my argument. Spectrum. That's the point of the spectrum.
That's my argument, is that it's a spectrum, not a what is indie and what is not indie.
Where would it be on the spectrum? Because, if the definition of an indie film is whether it's made without, a production studio's money, then it's either something is indie or it is not indie.
Is George Lucas, is Vin Diesel a production company themselves, because they are such a big name in the Hollywood industry, and since they do have so much money, right?
I would say that there is more credence to George Lucas because he started his own production company rather than Vin Diesel, because Vin Diesel is just an actor-producer.
Well, also, the Vin Diesel scenario is hypothetical.
No, but I know what you're saying. Just because their name is on it, the movie gets made.
So, the other thing is, Lucas Productions is a real company, you know what I mean?
It's Lucasfilm, but...
The Lucasfilm, whatever. But then at the same time, you could argue that Stale Pretzel Productions, my production company, is a real production company, even though there is literally no one on the payroll other than me. And
it's not really a payroll either.
Yeah, I just get the money I make from making movies for people and slap my logo on it. Well, not even a logo, just my name. I basically DJ Khaled it. Stale Pretzel Productions. We the best productions. We the best movies. Anyway, let's get back on the topic. Let's share another note from your list.
I've pretty much gone through them all.
Oh, really?
I mean, because, in watching these movies, I realized that, it's hard to note individual things with the individual movies because they are very, very similar movies.
So, let's talk one by one, and I do believe we're getting pretty close to our typical runtime.
We're an hour in.
Which we did take a quick break when my dad came in to talk to me.
It was a minute.
Oh, wow. Excellent. Anyway, I think that each character, a lot of the characters specifically, so first off, they added the character of Mark Wahlberg, which I think was just a stunning addition in that they were able to make a good cop and a bad cop, and Mark Wahlberg was able to add to the ending of the film, right? And then 100%,
yes.
I really, really, really was pretty much jaw-dropped by how little I was compelled by the main gangster in Infernal Affairs, in that Jack Nicholson is such a
it's no
ridiculous
contest.
character. You know what I mean? And also his performance is incredible.
I mean, it's also just a thing of... The Departed is a Scorsese movie. It's hard to be bad. It's just because it's a Scorsese movie, the acting is good. The writing is good. Like, every character in this movie is a good character. Every character, like, in this movie takes what from Infernal Affairs and adds something can usually add something to it, right? Or like besides like all of the main characters, it usually does that. Besides like. I would say that Matt Damon is like the exact same. I don't think he has any more character traits. I feel like they emphasized Leo's character traits, but they didn't really change any. Right? I feel like every other character it's really just like either other characters are added entirely, or characters are combined, or in the case of the girlfriend in The Departed, it's the same as the wife and the therapist. They just combined those two characters,
which is an extremely smart and
100%
movie-altering detail.
I wouldn't call it movie-altering, but it makes it a lot. It makes it a lot smoother of a plot.
And more interesting of a movie, because the whole thing about these two movies is that they're comparing and contrasting two people who have the exact same job on opposite sides.
Yes, and the thing that I like about Internal Affairs is, although The Departed has better writing and the actors act better, right? Or they're more just everything about The Departed I feel like is just a notch up. But what I feel like what it misses on Infernal Affairs is that, as I said before, there's just more of like the two characters trying to outwit each other in Infernal Affairs. And I feel like that's just not as much there in The Departed, and it's taken up with other B plots.
And anyway, the other thing I wanted to speak on is probably one of my favorite things about The Departed. I probably have like 5 specific favorite things, and one of them is even just one line of dialogue, which I've already shared. And one of those is the intro. That intro...
Yes. This is actually one of the bullet points that I wrote down that I forgot about.
The intro in The Departed completely blew me away.
Yeah,
the first time I saw it.
It takes what Infernal Affairs does, and it's just like, and more. Although I don't understand the whole Golden Dome thing. Like, why he buys a house so he can see the Golden Dome. And
I'm guessing it's some kind of Boston landmark.
Yeah, it's some Boston landmark, and I think he grew up next to it, but it's like...
Anyway...
I don't feel like it was made clear enough, or had enough of an impact to make it worthwhile. But yes, I would agree with you, and I have a specific thing to say about the intro that I liked.
Anyway, just this whole idea of... I mean, what is it, like 10 minutes until you see the opening credits?
Yeah, it's like 10, maybe. I would not say 15, but it kind of feels like it.
It feels like a 15 because so much ground is covered.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're in the movie by the time it says The Departed for the first time on screen, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no,
we just started?
That was the exact feeling I had. It was like, oh, yes.
And of course, dude, that music cue, what a, and the way it comes in and out. So first off, that whole sliding thing, you know, is so sick, where the shots slide from one thing to another, right?
Okay.
You know, in that montage where it's all,
I think so.
They move from the left to the right of the screen, right?
I think so.
or right to the left of the screen, actually. And anyway, it's just awesome how the music comes in, right? And it's so, big and boastful, right?
Yeah.
And the way the music stops, I don't know. I've actually rewatched this a couple times just on YouTube, right? Because I love that sequence so much. It's funny as heck the way that the music stops, because it really abruptly stops. But it works so well, and that's just, he gets out of prison, the montage is over, and it's, for some reason, it's not fading out, and then he knocks on the door, and it cuts, and the lady goes, "Oh, hey,"
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was fantastic. But yeah.
The other thing that I really, really like about the intro is, for the entire, first couple scenes of the intro, Jack Nicholson is entirely dark, and you can barely see any of his facial features, but everyone else in the shot is lit.
Yeah.
And it's in scenes in which normally just everyone would be lit, and they would be lit fairly evenly, Jack Nicholson is completely in shadow. And I think that is it's just a good use of light, and it's very clearly this person is bad, because all you can see is the outline of a person and Jack Nicholson's voice.
Whereas they didn't do that in Infernal Affairs.
No.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is how they do a better job of establishing the characters, right? In
Yes, I would
The
agree.
Departed, in that opening sequence where they show them acting in a couple things, right? In a couple sequences that have some character-driven dialogue,
Yeah,
and
this is one of the times where the movie smooths it over. This and the end is where the movie smooths it over, and that's what's most important, because the middle of Infernal Affairs is the best part of the movie, but the beginning and the end start and end a bit rough, especially with the time gap. And that happened in this movie too, as I was but who's Matt Damon and who's Leo, and I just didn't know which was which, because they look so similar, as they're just white people with blonde hair, and so I didn't know who
I
it
did
was,
think
but
that
it
was kind
worked
of
out.
It was kind of cool though. I thought and I
It's
think
just confusing.
both
and it had the
both
same
movies
feel as
do this
Infernal
as
Affairs.
well. In that they pick pretty similar looking people. Not
Barely.
that similar, but
One has a more strong jawline, and the other is more rounded. It's literally that for both movies.
that is funny. And anyway, it's I think that adds something to it that you kind of have to. It takes a second, and only once they really change haircuts, you really are yeah, I'm good now.
They changed haircuts?
Yeah, Leonardo DiCaprio and the Asian actor both get a different haircut while they're in prison.
They do?
Yes, they both start out with the same haircut as the Matt Damon character, because they're all going through the academy, right?
Uh-huh.
And then what happens is, while they're in prison, they both change their haircut. In the in the Asian version, he grows his hair out, right? And it's really
and Matt
sloppy.
Damon buzzes it? Or Leo buzzes it?
Leo buzzes it while he's in prison, and then when he
Okay.
gets out, it's a little more uppity, I think.
Okay. I can see it, yeah. But that, once you know who the characters are, that's not a problem. The problem is that establishing that this person is the same person.
The first time I watched The Departed, I was so glad that Leonardo DiCaprio changed his haircut. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I mean, it has the same problem in Infernal Affairs. Of just, these are two people. They went through. One left the academy. One didn't. But I don't. And they're grown up now. But the older actors don't look like the younger actors. And it's just.
I think
it's
both
just
movies
confusing a little
it takes you a little bit to
Yeah, I would agree.
figure it all out and get grounded in the film.
But once you do, it's fine.
But I think that what takes about 5 or 10 minutes in The Departed takes double the amount of time in Infernal Affairs.
Yeah.
And also I think that especially when it takes that long to get grounded in the film, and it's a much shorter film, that really takes away, because I have to figure out what's going on for much longer. Here's the other thing
with Infernal Affairs, or that I feel like this is what hurts the movie the most, right? Everything throughout the entire movie, when anything happens like important, like really like super like plot point important happens, they do a flashback to the opening scene, right?
Oh my god, those flashbacks made me so angry.
Yeah. And the flashback to the opening scene is all of these kids being inducted into the gang, right? Into the right? And there is a scene like this in The Departed, but
I don't remember the flashback scene in The Departed.
They're all working on working on cars. And like it's not it's
but
like,
is it ever flashed back to?
There's no flashbacks, but it can be assumed that since it is from Infernal Affairs, that the person who then tries and saves Matt Damon at the end was one of the kids there. But like the problem with Infernal Affairs is that scene, there's like 12 kids, and you really only need to care about 2 of them, and it keeps cutting between the 2 of them, and like within the scene, and it just doesn't like fully connect well. And then at the end of the movie, it cuts like one of the kids that saves the Matt Damon character in Infernal Affairs was also in that scene, and it takes a picture of him, and it cuts back to the flashback of that first scene, and you're like, this guy wasn't even in it. Like I didn't even like see him. I wasn't trying to pay attention. Like
anyway,
it's just too confusing. Like that part should have just had better writing, and they should have just like written it out more. And instead of just using flashbacks and like freeze frames on people's faces and being like, this person is this person, now go. Like it just doesn't work.
Oh my god,
well,
yeah, those freeze frames too.
Yeah,
I thought, even when they're making it so over the top, like to explain,
yeah, but like just have characters explain it instead of just freeze framing it. Just have them like talk about it in like dialogue, which is the cardinal sin of movies, but do it smartly.
And again, still, right? They break that, they do that cardinal sin, right? And still, I feel like it takes longer to find your grounding in Infernal Affairs than it does in The Departed.
Just because in the first, we've been talking a lot. In the first scene, you're shown the crime boss, and you're shown 3 kids, and you have to remember the crime boss and the 2 kids that are important are enough of a problem as it is. The crime boss is fine. He stays the same because he's an already adult and he just dyes his hair gray, right? The 2 kids change completely, which is tough. And then at the end of the movie, you're supposed to remember one of the kids from the beginning of the movie that you didn't really spend time on.
I don't know if you were supposed to remember him,
I mean, yeah, but it flashes back and like, look, this person was at the beginning of the movie. He was part of one of these people. And it's just like, just explain it better, honestly. And like The Departed does it better, but it's still with the ending of the movie, I feel still like it still has some of the same underlying problem, but it's a lot better.
So I'd like to make my final words, and that's this. I find that Infernal Affairs is a fine 2000s cop movie, but I really think that it on its own would not even be remembered as well as something like, Jason Bourne, which was, well, I guess it's pretty similar because they got sequels in Infernal Affairs. But anyway, my thought is that as far as legacy goes, this film really doesn't deserve to be that well remembered. You know what I mean? Because it's just a fine, good, fun movie, whilst The Departed is, I believe, to be an epic and a masterpiece. So that's my point, and I know you disagree, but that's
I
also
disagree
why.
because we never fully talked about this point of I brought this up, but we never revisited it, of like how many of Martin Scorsese's films are based off of other movies or other books. Because I feel like if it's based off a book, that's fine. It's another form of medium. People like the translation from book to movie is one that is done very often, and because it's different mediums. But if you're making a remake of another movie, or you're doing another movie again, that's where the lines start to blur. And if he I see that he does this often, and that's fine. That if he likes to do that, that's fine. Like some people just want to do other movies.
Martin
I'm not shitting on him.
Martin Scorsese is so
You're a
glad
terrible
that
actor,
he has your permission.
filmmaker, and you can't come up with your own ideas. But
I'm just saying,
I'm kidding. I'm being
Roberto.
facetious.
I'm just saying that
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese is so happy now that he has your permission to do all this. It fills him up with so much joy, and he's glad that finally he has Roberto Mancosten's permission to do what he does.
Great. I don't care. He's old, and he's gonna probably die in the next 5 or 10 years.
Whoa! Please don't say that. I like Mr.
I mean,
Scorsese.
yeah, but he's like how old now? Anyway, regardless, I don't know. It's just like it's one of those Hollywood questions of just like doing what is right and what is not right, and whether it is right to it's the lines are very blurry, and no specific thing is right or wrong, I guess. But we've definitely, I feel, made ourselves clear of what we think is definitely the most extreme, and definitely what is whitewashing and what is more acceptable. I feel like this is definitely in the middle of that, because there are definitely we've gone over this, but
also I don't think whitewashing was a concept in 2006.
Well, yeah, because it's 2006. It is 14 years ago.
It's kind of that same question of like.
Yeah, things that were acceptable then
you kind of gotta forgive some
now.
certain things because people didn't know based on the times.
Yeah, that's one this is one of the more developing things, and one of the things that I think might be interesting to see is I think it might have been Gwyneth Paltrow or some shit, or some one of those like actors, they made a movie. And then now, there's some scandal come up with the movie, and then she said that I would not have acted in that movie were I to make it today, or I regret acting in that movie. And I'm wondering if, in the future, some actor is going to take heat from acting in this movie, because while it does change some of Infernal Affairs, and in some instances makes it better. This is one of the things that I can definitely see Twitter liberals getting upset over and making a whole thing about. And I wonder if in several years some actor is going to be like, I'm sorry that I acted in this movie, and this time it was okay, but I guess now it's not. But that would be the extremes. I would be a little bit surprised if that, well, I don't know.
All right, well, I think we got it.
Yeah, but they're both good films. Watch Infernal Affairs first, though.
I'm so glad I told you to do that.
I am honestly so glad that you came up with both these movies and you told me to watch Infernal Affairs first. This was probably I feel like the most interesting conversation we've had.
I think I'm gonna keep playing mind tricks with you.
Oh, I would love that.
A fun story that might be fun to close off the podcast with,
okay,
but might be something you just chop off.
Yeah,
when I tried
right
to,
here.
when I tried to be Mr. Manipulative Director to my good friend Matthew Kaplowitz on Surprise, and it didn't work at all. Do you remember this?
No, I don't, but I am a little salty that well, okay, we can talk about this later.
Well, I tried to intentionally make it to where Matthew was legitimately uncomfortable in the scene, specifically with the girl who flirts with him, right?
Yeah.
Because he has a girlfriend, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted him to actually think that she was hitting on him. And I tried to have her be somewhat flirtatious with him on set as well. And I let her in on the secret. And also there's a kiss on the cheek scene, so I tried to have her go around and if she's comfortable and if other people were comfortable with it, go around and ask permission to kiss some people on the cheek, just so that it wasn't awkward, when they actually go and do it, right?
Yeah.
On set, whereas it is awkward for him, right?
Yeah.
And then Matthew just wasn't uncomfortable at all. So.
Yeah, I remember that story, and Well,
I was learning so much about what Lars von Trier had done to some of his actors and what Stanley Kubrick had done to some of his actors, specifically in The Shining. I was like, all right, I got to do this.
That's a role model of stuff to do to your actors.
Well, sadly, I'm in the belief of the film comes first.
Let's emotionally damage my actors to get a better performance. I'll try that.
I'm just saying, long after Shelley Duvall is dead, people will still talk about The Shining. That's probably really insensitive. I'm sorry, but I don't care. Well, I do care about Shelley Duvall, but
you don't care about her mental state at all.
In the abstract futuristic ideas of the world, I'll manipulate my actors if I have to. I'll go hard if I have to. But I also don't think I have the imagination for that. So, seeing as how well it
cocaine instead of using fake cocaine, Truman uses real cocaine. Wow, what a manipulation of actors.
I don't think that counts as manipulation of actors.
It definitely does not.
It just counts as great acting. I'm just kidding. All right, that's that.
It's also probably illegal by forcing drugs onto other people, but...
Do you know that they had to teach Leonardo DiCaprio how to snort cocaine for The Wolf of Wall Street? They had to teach him what to do.
That's funny.
And he was snorting powdered milk, I believe.
Oh, my little boy.
And for one of our movies, Drugs You Should Try It, I got flavored creamer to be powdered milk. And my actor, which is Nicholas, right? He got so pissed. He got so mad.
You would.
All right. Well, that's that.
So many people got upset at me for pouring the malted milk into my mouth. So that's this episode. Our next episode is the art of self-defense. So that'll be next week. Yeah. That's the end.